Welcome to a new video. Today I'm going to share with you my Mutant deck profile as requested. Now Mutant is a very cool archetype that got released in Phantom Rage, and honestly they're kind of more control-ish and more kind of like giving me a feeling of more aggressive Altergeist, because they do have capabilities to be very aggressive and can be good in both turns, but they're mostly good going first just like Geist and have some card and effects that feeling out the same. Regardless, the archetype is very fun. I wish we got more support because we only got the support from Phantom Rage, so hopefully in the future we'll get more. But for now, the skeleton of the deck is still very good, and I want to share with you what it's capable of doing. But before we jump right into the list itself, I'm going to remind you that the usual thing that the subscriber they keep the depression away. I don't know why I got confused for a second. But if you want to help the channel see more videos like this, and also let me know what you think in the comments down below, I would really much appreciate it. And I really appreciate all the support that you're giving me. And without further ado, let's jump right into the list itself. So let's jump right into the list itself, and to start things off with the Mutant monsters, we're going to start with the starters, which are triple copies of ST46, and then the triple copies of M05. These two are your starters of the archetype. M05 is your monster searcher, and 46 is your spells and trap searcher, and kind of like really simple, they both share the same effect, that they get to tribute themselves and then banish a card from the hand or field, and depending on the type of the card, they're able to summon one of your big boys, either from your deck or your hand. In the case of, if you banish a monster, you summon Beast. In the case of a spell, you summon Mist, and in the case of the trap, you summon Arsenal. So depending on the cards that you banish, you get to summon from your deck. And these both are harder ones per turn for both effects, but you have the ability to summon two of these, or should I say, like, two big boys per turn, so that's actually kind of cool. And honestly, if you have a hard time remembering which one is which, the level 3 is the Spell and Trap Searcher, the level 2 is the Monster Searcher. Honestly, that's pretty simple, and they kind of like what they do. In the case of the big guys, we're on double copies of Mutant Beast, one copy of Mist, and one copy of Arsenal. Honestly, pretty standard. And yes, I do proxy the Mist is because of the reason that the cards that I ordered, like, had a little bit of a problem when they arrived, that they kind of like some of them were incorrect. I got 2 Arsenals instead of getting 1 Mist. So the copy of Mist that I'm supposed to get is not here yet, but it should arrive within the week. It just is not here for the time that I'm recording this video. So for this time, please forgive me that I have to proxy this one. However, for their individual stuff, basically we have, pretty, I wouldn't say like same effects, but like effects that, like, except from their own main effect, they kind of like share the same thing overall, so it's kind of like simple to understand. In the case of Beast, sorry, before we'll jump into these, in the case of all of them, they cannot be special, or should I say summoned, unless you have used a mutant effect to summon them. So that's kind of a little bit of annoying, that's why they're kind of a little bit of a bricks. But in case of Beast, he's cannot be targeted by your opponent monsters, Mist is spells, and Arsenal is traps. Beast, when opponent activates a spell effect, you get to basically banish a card from your hand or field, any, doesn't really matter which, and then you get to just negate that effect. Mist will allow you to, when a trap effect is activated, to do the same thing, but draw 2 cards. And then Arsenal, when a monster effect is activated, same thing for the requirements, but after the effect resolves, you basically banish that monster from the field. And then when they die by an opponent card effect, or should I say destroyed by battle, you get to kind of also retrieve a mutant banished card back. Beast allowing you to retrieve a trap, Mist allowing you to retrieve a monster, and Arsenal allowing you to retrieve a spell. They're kind of a little bit annoying to remember, a little bit, but they're a little bit more easier to remember than the actual same arts, Mutant ST46 and 05, but Beast is definitely the best one. It's a spell negation, it's the easiest one to summon because you summon 05, search 46, banish 46, after you tribute those 05, and then you summon this out of the deck immediately. These two are more for, different situations. Arsenals is if you open up multiples of your mutant traps and you cannot activate more than one of them per turn anyway, so this is kind of like in order to have a self-corrector, I guess, and get something out of it. In the case of Mist, is just in really fringe situations or against high, heavy control other decks, so you'll be able to generate advantage on that regard as well. But that's pretty much does it for the big boys, and does it for the mutants. You only run 10. The rest of the cards, or should I say the monsters, are hand traps, which are 3 D-Shifter, 3 Gamma, and the 1 Driver. These are your hand traps that I decided to go with. In the case of D-Shifter, absolutely bunkers card. This one, as a quick effect, if you don't have cards in your graveyard, you get to send this card from your hand to the graveyard, and until the next turn, any card sent to the graveyard is banished instead, making this card absolutely ridiculous, and a card that just kills almost every deck possible, unless you're playing a mirror match or a deck that just benefits from Banish Pile, which is not a whole lot of these in the format. You're just going to kill almost everything, so that's really cool. And in Gamma and Driver, honestly, you can just cut these for, like, 3 Ash and then this, whatever you want, but I decided to go with these because Gamma is honestly a card that you're going to resolve more than you think. A lot of people, or at least the smarter players that are played against, are most of the time trying to negate their effect of tributing themselves to then resolve something, or just summon out of the deck, rather than just, negating the search, because the summoning beast out of the deck is most of the time a little bit more powerful than, just, how should I say this, than, the search for a monster or spells and traps, because if you don't have the ability to get these out of your deck, some of your spells and traps are still pretty useless, so the special summoning effect is the more important one, and that's most of the time what I see people trying to negate for me, and that's why Gamma is also really good, because you're not going to have monsters on the field, and on top of that, it still performed the same way as Ash for most of the particular things that you wanted to. So that's why Gamma, in my opinion, is the better one out of the two, but it's up to you. What do you decide to go with? But that does it for the monsters. Then we'll move on into the spells, and for the spells, double Mutation Lab, or should I say Evolution Lab, 1 Terraforming, 1 Fusion, triple Extrav, and 1 copy of Teleport. So honestly, all of these spells are just really just power spells, I guess. Well, except for maybe Fusion. Fusion is probably the worst spell, but we'll get to it in a second. Evolution Lab and Terraforming, I'm going to go with these first. So Terraforming is a card that you could run as your third Evolution Lab, or on top of your 3 Evolution Labs. But the reason why I decided to go with 2 Evolution Lab and 1 Terraforming is because I really don't depend on Mist, and how should I say this? Thinning up my deck is a little bit more important for later turns. On top of that, Terraforming is just a good card in general to, thin up my deck. And Evolution Lab is a harder once per turn, so I don't really want to have more than 2 of it. Evolution Lab on activation, allowing you to basically special summon a level 4 or lower mutant monster from your hand or banished pile, which is kind of cool. But, like I said, it's only when you activate it, you can only activate it once per turn, so that's why it's not really the best thing in the world. But it does have a nice effect on top of this, which is as a soft once per turn, that you get to target one of your, or should I say place one of your mutant monsters from your hand to the bottom of the deck and draw a card. So as long as you didn't use Extrav, you can still fix your hand with your big guys. So let's say you draw a beast, you can still put the beast from the bottom of your deck and draw a better card, most of the time. It's also have a nice sizable attack boost, or should I say a small attack boost, but it's not really matter for most situation. In the case of Mutant Fusion, this card is honestly not the best fusion spell in the world, but it's mostly here for the name. You get to banish mutant monsters for a fusion summon, either from your hand or field, and then if your opponent activate a card effect, you can also banish 1 from the deck and 1 from the graveyard, making this card kind of okay, but not really in the level of Shadow Fusion and stuff like that. So this card is more of just a one-off if you need it. Doesn't really do a whole lot in general, and definitely a card that you most of the time banish. It's cool, it's definitely a good one-off, but in the future we'll get a better support for this archetype. I could see this card being cut completely because it just doesn't really do a whole lot, but for now it just does what it needs to do for the moment. Then 3 Extravs. Extravs is the other option for Prosperity. If you have Prosperity, you can play Prosperity instead and also change the extra deck properly. But these are, I think, sometimes a little bit better because you get to banish 6 cards. Of course, not you don't choose them, but you get to draw 2 cards, which sometimes is better than just getting 1 random card, because sometimes you need the advantage. But one thing I would mention is that if you draw extra off of extra, you do have the ability to use some of your small mutants to then banish the 1 extra from your hand and still summon a mist from your deck, still turning this into a very useful card. And then 1 emergency teleport, because all of your small guys are level 3 or lower psychics, so that's pretty good to have as a starter as well, or just a follow-up, which is kind of cool. That's for the spells, and for the traps, 3 Cry, 3 Expansion, and then the 1 Macrocosmos for the mutant-related traps, I guess. Macrocosmos not really, but I still wanted to count it in anyway. Basically, these are the important cards that you want to search with ST46 most of the time, if you already have Evolution Lab or you don't really need anything else. These are the important cards. Mutant Cry is a fusion spell, which during the main phase allowing you to shuffle mutant monsters from your graveyard, banish pile, or field to the deck, and then summon the appropriate fusion monsters that you want to summon, which is actually really powerful because you can summon either Ultimaeus or Synthesis, which we'll get to those extra deck monsters, which is really good. Expansion is kind of a better personal spooping, I guess. On activation, you get to special summon or add to your hand mutant monster level 4 or lower, so you can trigger during the opponent's turn the ST46 or the M05, whatever you feel like it, or add these to your hand as a follow-up. And on top of this, this is a continuous trap, which stays on the field that you can banish with your mutants' big ones effects, or, you know, your small guys when you will get to your turn again. But on top of that, it also protects your monsters as long as it's on the field. If a mutant monster's level 8 or higher monsters will be destroyed by a card effect or by battle, you get to banish this card, or should I say only by card effect, you get to basically banish this card from the field that you control instead. So that's actually kind of a really cool, nice protection on that one as well. And then Macrocosmos, it just kills a lot of decks, so I'm running 1 copy of it, obviously. I wanted to also run D-Shifter, but I just didn't really have the space in the main deck, so that's why I decided to not play that one. But now for the rest of the traps, 3 Imperm, 3 there can be only 1, and then the double Solemn Strike. Honestly, this lineup can be whatever you wish. I decided to go with 3 Imperm because it's also a hand trap, so that's why I really like it a lot. And also Imperm is a little bit better this format, so that's why I decided to run 3 of it. Sometimes it can shut down decks completely, so that's why I like it a lot. There can be only 1, definitely a great card as well for that, honestly, as well. And then Solemn Strike was my last choice, 2 copies of it, because while I do like Punishment, I do like, Ice Prison. Ice Prison is a little bit expensive, but you know what I mean. And also Summon Limit. The reason why I decided to go with Strike is because a lot of the traps are like floodgates that can be removed by things like a Lightning Storm and stuff like that. And I'd rather have also proactive traps that either stop my opponent from Lightning Storm me to begin with, or just generally cards that like my opponent cannot respond to, and I can just stop chains for trading from 1 to 1. Because there are some decks that are a little bit of annoying for the fact that, like, you know, you activate your Infinite Permanence, and then they activate something against your Infinite Permanence, and then you activate another trap to deal with that, and then they activate another thing again. You know what I mean? It's like become a little bit of a rotation thing, so I rather have this to deal with them and end the chain immediately, so that's why I like to run the Solemn Strike. But this 8 spots or whatever you want to, you can also change depending on the situation of what you feel. But that's pretty much does it for the main deck. Now I'll move on into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, I run triple copies of Ultimaeus and triple copies of Synthesis. These are your 2 fusion monsters. Synthesis is definitely the better one out of the 2, at least at the moment, because it's a lot easier to summon. Ultimaeus is just really, really hard to summon, and mostly just a card that you use as turn 3 and forward, kind of like more of the grind game card. If you do play Prosperity, you only need to play the 1 copy, but if you're playing Extravagance, I recommend to play 3 just in case. In the case of what they do, Ultimaeus require 3 level 8 or higher mutant monsters, and then when a card effect is activated, whatever, you can banish a mutant, or should I say whatever card, you can banish a mutant card that is appropriate for that card type, monster, spell, and trap from your field or graveyard, and then negate the activation, so kind of like a mini Mechaba that also can use card from your graveyard, which making it pretty good. And then when this guy dies, he also recover one of each from your banished mutant's monster, spell, or trap. Or should I say one of each of these. So that's actually kind of nice when it dies. Mostly, like I said, it doesn't really happen, but if your opponent will try to remove this in the later stages of the game, it's still going to recover for you. Very, very nice advantage. In the case of Synthesis, which is the one that you want to summon mostly, this one requires 2 mutants monsters with different attributes, therefore sometimes you're not able to summon it, but if you have Cry and then you get it for a 46, and then you use 46 to summon a beast, for example, if you're banishing a monster, and searching, of course, Cry, you are going to summon this after you use Beast effect, and then get a card that immediately on summon pop stuff. And then also, if an opponent monster activate a card, you get to basically activate the effect that this card is unaffected by that type of card for the turn. And then when this card dies, he recover to you any banished mutant card that you want, which making this card really, really powerful. Basically the card that you really want to summon a whole lot of times, 2 or 3 times even in the game, and then you just use your third mutant card or whatever after you use like 2 of these, shuffle these back into the extra deck, and summon the Ultimaeus, which making this card very, very good, and I love it a lot. I definitely want to run Prosperity in this deck a little bit more because I don't want to banish all 3 copies of this, but sometimes because we are a little bit more on the budget, I guess, and I don't want to waste that much money on Prosperity, I'm going to go with Extrev instead. But that's pretty much does it for the fusions. The rest, 1 Omega for the Cyframe stuff, 1 Zoroboros and 1 Trisbania because banish stuff and you don't care, and if you are able to get into these, sometimes they're also game winning by themselves. Unicorn, Phoenix, Cerberus to kind of have a little bit of advantage with the Cyframe stuff, and then like, you know, summon these if you need to, so that's actually kind of cool. IP, another card that you can summon with the Cyframe stuff, and just making things very, very nicely to just turn, sometimes your Synthesis and this become like another interruption with a Unicorn, so that's kind of cool. Cross Sheep for the some cases that you are able to summon it with a fusion, and then Gravity Controller. Now, if you are playing also the Dragoon package, definitely change this into, you know, change the extra deck a little bit more to also play things like Verite Anaconda and Dragoons, but we're not playing that, so honestly, whatever you want to play in the rest of your extra deck, it is what it is, and you can do whatever you chose to go with. But that's pretty much does it for the extra deck, and does it for the deck profile as a whole. Honestly, a very, very fun deck, which is, I love this deck so much. It's a little bit difficult to manage, like, you know, your spells and traps, because of the fact that, like, it is a control deck, so you need to be very mindful of what you use. But this deck is really, really fun. Unfortunately, I'm going to say right now, there is not going to be any combo section, because there's really no combos for this deck if you're playing the control package, or should I say, like, you know, the control route, not playing anything else, and playing it as pure as possible, because you just want to draw to one of your starters, search a card, banish a card with it after tributing it, and then summon one of the appropriate big boys, and then set up your entire back row and just pass to your opponent. That's kind of how that goes with this deck, and that's why there's really not a place for a combo section. But that's pretty much it for the list itself. Hope you enjoyed, and now let's move on into the next deck choices to start things for the month of May. Alright, so for the next deck choices, these deck choices are going to be deck choices for the next 2 weeks, like I should say, like, you know, after the dual avatar list and the surprise list that I plan, these are going to come out after that, because I want to plan a little bit in advance to have a little bit of things to know what are you guys are more interested with, so I kind of like will not be feeling a little bit of, you know, that I'm kind of have to race for it and just be able to kind of like plan things ahead. So for the 4 lists that I have for you to choose for that essential week, or at least for that, and essentially decide for the rest of the month of May, we have Tenyi, Fluffles, what are called Unchained, and I forgot the one, oh yeah, Code Talkers. Which is essentially an update to Code Talkers after Firewall basically got unbanned. So these are the 4 options. I'm going to return saying them again. Tenyi, Fluffles, Unchained, and Code Talkers. These are the 4 options that are going to come out after the dual avatar and the surprise list. Not before of these. These are just to help me kind of plan things for the month of May. So let me know in the comments down below what you're interested more in seeing first. But that's pretty much does it for the list itself, and does it for the deck profile. Like I said, there's really no room for combos, unfortunately, but I'm hoping that you still enjoy the list itself and find it kind of like, helpful for you if you're playing mutants or planning to pick them up. And honestly, I'm just enjoying sometimes just heavy control decks. There are some things that you don't really see a whole lot in Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now, so yeah, Mutant is definitely a nice, refreshing thing, and also it's worked with Banish, which making it kind of stupid sometimes. So I like this deck very, very much a lot. But that's pretty much does it for the video. Once again, I'm going to say, and if you enjoyed the video, please consider to like, subscribe, or remember, creativity is the key in this game. Have a good day, stay safe, and I'll see you in the dual avatar video. If you're just interested in the deck profile or just a next video, we'll see. Bye-bye.